So any regrets trading off the Jeep Gladiator? Right now, if you're not familiar, I'm sitting in a 2024 Jeep Wrangler two-door automatic transmission. It is the 2-liter turbo, which I was a little bit unsure of before I bought this thing, but I have to say I'm very, very happy with it. It is awesome. Plenty of power, plenty of get up and go. Gas mileage, yeah, you know, it's a Jeep. But anyway, I had a 2021 Jeep Gladiator Mojave. It was in that Schnazberry red. Of course, it was an automatic, and it was a truck. And I actually didn't trade it off for this Jeep Wrangler. I traded it off for a Toyota Tundra, which I had for a very short period of time. And then I got this, the Jeep Wrangler. And, you know, when I say a short period of time, I mean like 2 or 3 months. It wasn't very long. It wasn't very smart on my part either, but nonetheless, that's in the past. The Jeep Gladiator, awesome truck. I mean, I loved it. It had its quirks, particularly the auto stop system fault or failure due to the auxiliary battery. That's something that I knew was coming. It hadn't happened yet in that Jeep Gladiator, but it was approaching 3 years old, and that seems to be the sweet spot for that auxiliary battery to fail. So I knew that was coming. But more annoying, I guess, is that it had a vibration to it. You know, after a while, and I say after a while because I would add a fuel injector cleaner and it seemed to get rid of that vibration. But then 2-3 months later, it would do the same thing again. And it wasn't horrid, but enough that I noticed it. It became annoying, and it's something that I just didn't want to live with anymore. So I thought, you know, why have a vehicle? I buy vehicles primarily for pleasure, you know. I don't use trucks for work or anything like that. So I get them because I like them, because I enjoy driving them. And I did in that Jeep Gladiator. I mean, it had great power. It was a V6. Would have been nice if it was a V8. But it was fun to drive. It was comfortable. All of the other tech seemed to work just fine, although I did have that seemingly common Mopar radio black screen. It always seems like after you get a Mopar product, you're going to get a radio black screen at some point. The screen goes out, and then eventually it'll either come back on a minute or so later, or the next time you start the truck. Had the same thing happen with that. I've had it happen with every Mopar product I've bought, including this Jeep. It did the same thing, but I believe it's an update. I think that the radio reboots after it's put into service, and it kind of updates because it only happens one time and then you never see it again. So otherwise, tech-wise and everything else in that truck was fantastic. Probably the biggest thing I miss, I guess, is not having a bed. You know, I could throw something in the back if I wanted to. Never a concern about hauling anything. It had a tonneau cover on it, so everything was, you know, covered and hidden and all that stuff when I would haul something, which honestly wasn't that frequently. And I do have another truck now. I have a Toyota Tacoma. It's an open bed. I haven't put a tonneau on it or anything. So if I need to haul anything, I do have the luxury of having that bed. So bottom line is, no, I really don't miss it, other than the appearance. I did love the appearance of it, but, you know, it's kind of one for the other. I love the appearance of the Jeep Wrangler, particularly this one. It's got this anvil color. You know, it's kind of a blue-gray almost, and it changes. It depends on the lighting. You know, today with the cloudier type weather outside, it looks a little bit more gray, but in bright sunshine, it looks a little bit more blue-gray. So I really dig that. It's pretty cool. And I've put aftermarket wheels and tires on this Jeep, kind of to poke them out a little bit and to get a little bit more of an aggressive look. It had just the all-season stockers on it, but yeah, it wasn't good enough. They were more aggressive looking than past Jeep tires, I gotta say. They did have a little bit of a rough edge around them, more of an off-road looking type tire, but still, you know, they were kind of like poser tires, right? They really weren't aggressive tires. They just kind of wanted to be. but they were never going to be. And they didn't poke out far enough for me. I like to have a bit of wheel poke, you know, in my vehicles. I think it just makes them look more aggressive, gives you a tougher stance, and I definitely wanted that for this Jeep. Now, some questions I should answer, I guess, on this one. I've been asked if I'm going to put an aftermarket exhaust on it. The answer to that is easy, no. I've had aftermarket exhausts on Jeep Wranglers before, and they were horrible. Very tinny sounding, a lot of drone, and they just didn't sound good. And putting an aftermarket exhaust on a 4-cylinder, I think that would be even worse. I mean, for me, in my experience, the only way you're going to get good sound out of any engine is if it's an 8-cylinder. It's got to be an 8-cylinder. Otherwise, you're kind of spinning your wheels, settling, and wasting your time. Now, I will say on V6s, if you put an air raid, cold air intake on it, that sounds pretty good. Gives you a nice grumble from under the hood. The only one that I've come across for Jeep that does that, and I've had, I think, 3 of them now. My wife's Jeep Wrangler, which is a 6-cylinder, has an air raid cold air intake on it, and it sounds awesome. So the other is lift. Am I going to lift it? Am I going to change the suspension, move it up in the air some? And that's another easy one. The answer is no, I'm not. My wife has a 2018, it's a Jeep Wrangler Sport S 2-door, and we had put more aggressive wheels and tires on that. She wanted it, and also lifted it with a 3-inch lift. The thing looks freaking awesome. I mean, it looks aggressive, it looks tough, but it rides like a lumber wagon, as far as I'm concerned. There is no comparison between it and this Jeep. I will mention a little caveat there. We did end up changing out some Nitto Ridge grapplers that we had on there in the beginning, as well as some bigger wheels, and went with a little bit smaller wheel and a Falcon Wild Peak tire, and it did make a big difference. I mean, it's much better than it used to be, but when you compare it to this Jeep, nah, it's still too rough, I think, for me. But you do sacrifice having that look. So there won't be any lift for me on here. Other things, cosmetically, I've already done some things to this. I'm not going to spoil the future videos, so if you want to find out what else I've done, you'll have to watch the videos. There are more coming up. Always adding things to the Jeep, always taking things off. I think one of my bigger mods that I'm going to do on this Jeep is the front bumper. I want to change that out. I want something more aggressive looking, something beefier, and something a little bit more mid-size or mid-distance. I don't know what you want to call it, a mid bumper. In other words, I want to see more of the front tires, but I don't want to go full stubby. I want a little bit left, kind of poking into the center tire area, looking at the Jeep from the front. So that's going to be coming as well, and probably a rear bumper too. You can't change the front bumper and do nothing on the rear. And the good thing about Jeeps in general, they are very easy to mod. Lots of options out there. So anyway, I just wanted to get on. I've been getting some questions, you know, do you miss the Jeep Gladiator? Was it a mistake? And the answer is yes and no. I do miss it somewhat because I liked it. But no, I like this one just a little bit more. Leave a comment. Let me know if you've gone from, say, a Gladiator to a Wrangler or maybe any other vehicle. Do you miss not having that Jeep Gladiator? I'd just be curious to know. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.